Okay, everyone, now it's time for the Q&A portion of the program. So I'll just start by introducing our panelists tonight. So first we have Kristian Kabuay, who directed the film you just saw. He's an artist, entrepreneur, and futurist, specializing in endangered writing systems from the Philippines. As a leading authority for the propagation and instruction of pre-Philippine scripts, he launched his own edutainment business specializing in custom art, books, events, technology, and apparel. Kristian has spoken around the world at museums, schools, and companies. His work is wide-reaching that spans across multimedia, traditional practices, and technology. He is currently working on his 7th book, second documentary, Education Startup and Learning Traditional Tattooing. Eileen Ligot-Dizon is the founder and managing partner of the Ligot-Dizon law firm PC. She's an attorney admitted to practice law in the state courts of Texas and handles divorce, immigration, and wills, trust, and probate cases. Eileen is a lifetime member of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. She has worked as a court attorney in the Philippine Court of Appeals, where she handled cases involving annulment and nullity of marriages and cases involving real estate disputes. Born and raised in the Philippines, she speaks and writes Tagalog fluently. And finally, last but not least, we have Vice Consul Marco Angelo Felix Lim Lopez. He's the Vice Consul of the Philippine Consulate General in Houston, Texas. He was appointed to that position in 2018. His previous roles at the Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs include serving as acting director of the Treaties Division of the Office of Legal Affairs, or OLA, and principal assistant in the OLA's Litigation and Service of Summons Division. He also served as executive assistant in the Office of Justice Lopez of the Court of Appeals in the Philippines. Vice Consul Lopez received a BA in International Studies from De La Salle University, a JD from the University of Philippines, Diliman, and an LLM in International Maritime Law from the University of Malta. So I'll welcome our panelists tonight. And we're going to start it off with Kristian. We just unmute here.
Hello, hello.
Hey, okay. So your background is in many different disciplines. But why this film and this subject?
Yeah, this film was I would say my pandemic project. When many of us were stuck at home, we picked up hobbies. We said, oh, we're gonna exercise, become a plant parent, and all of these things if we were privileged enough to do so. And I started to think about, I guess, family and, our mortality, I guess. And, I'm kind of, and like many of you watching we're at that age where, we start to lose loved ones. And I just found it necessary to document these stories. And so this film specifically is because it was based on some, I would say, land trauma and drama, in my own family. And, we had land that was sold, and, it was difficult to figure out from my titas and my other relatives back home in the Philippines. And I just wanted to hear the stories. And so from there, I just decided to record them. And this was all during, the height of the pandemic, just to record them via, Zoom, phone calls, and just capture those stories.
Great. And how did you connect with the people interviewed in the film?
Yes, since the subject's very, very touchy, and can be sensitive, maybe even cause family drama or legal drama. I didn't want to approach people that, I didn't really know. So all the people that I spoke to, I personally knew. And, they wanted to remain anonymous because of, the sensitivity around it for family and, pending cases, things like that. But they also agreed that, it is something that everyone has probably gone through if you're not just Filipino, but in a diaspora community as well.
And as I recall, the film premiered in last December. Is that correct?
Yeah, in LA Art Box. It's a Filipino American owned gallery in Los Angeles on Melrose. I had a small private screening there in December.
And what kind of reactions have you received so far?
Yeah, it was tears. I've held like some screenings online, and it was always like, I'm going through that same issue. I have the same problem with my mother, and I'm going to the Philippines next month, and my dad wants me to take care of some land in Ilocos Norte. I've never even been there. I don't speak the language. And so that was, the reaction at the live screenings was, I would spend, like 10, 20 minutes talking to one person, and they just felt like they had to outpour because they have no one to talk to about this. They can't talk to their coworkers or, their friends, because unless they're Filipino or an immigrant that can relate to it. But it was more of just like a relief. And, I think that initially I just wanted to capture the stories for people to, somehow tell their own. But then, talking to some folks that, maybe there is something that we can do. And, when, you and I, we've talked about other things in the past. And, when you reached out, I think that it's definitely something that could be of service to the immigrant community.
Well, thank you for embarking on this, because judging by the initial reactions we had so far, and even some of the comments right now, that there are quite a lot of people in similar situations, and so this is helping to do a service to them. So thank you. At this point, I'd also like to invite folks, at any point on the Zoom, feel free to submit your questions. And as we have remaining time, we can address them. But right now, let me bring on Aileen.
Yes, hi, Mark.
Hi, thank you for joining us. So let's just start it off by telling us a little bit about your background as an attorney, particularly as somebody who's dually licensed in the U.S. and in the Philippines, and as somebody who has worked in the court system as well, and has handled cases involving property disputes.
Yeah, so I do probate here and I do estate planning, and being a Filipino American attorney here, I have a lot of Filipino American clients who have properties in the Philippines. Either they purchase it or they inherited the properties. And so part of the estate planning is, extended into whatever properties they have in the Philippines. And also, since I do probate, there are also some issues that I need to settle or deal with in terms of properties that are located in the Philippines. And so I'm sorry, I'm having, I think it's allergy or something, but yeah. So anyway, so I usually have, like right now, I have clients who are dealing with inheritance issues in the Philippines, and so I can totally relate to the documentary that Kristian prepared. Very, very common among Filipino Americans who either are born in the Philippines, raised here, or born here, and at some point they still have connections in the Philippines. They go through this kind of problems, and it's always a question of where is the property located, how long have you been gone, how connected are you in the Philippines? Who are your relatives? All those questions, they matter a lot in terms of resolving issues like this. And when I was in the Philippines, and I work as a court attorney, a court of appeals, I handled land disputes, and land disputes are very, I must say, very sensitive issues, and it usually involves violence, killings, murders, family, complicated family disputes. So that's why when I was hearing, I'm hearing the accounts of the people in the documentary, I can picture it out in my mind when I was still there, and have to deal with murders in Isabela because of just a dispute over a small parcel of land. And even in when we in the provinces, we talk about hectares of land, like agricultural land, big areas of lands. But in the city area, the urban area, like in Manila, you're just dealing with probably just a common wall, or a right of way, and it's always like I said, sensitive issue, and usually involves violence. So, and that's how serious land dispute is in the Philippines. And so I always ask, is it worth it? And how much is the value of the property? Are you willing to fight for it? Are you gonna go there and face your relatives? So yeah, I can talk a lot about it, but for now, I'm just giving you, an overview of how complicated land disputes is in the Philippines. So if you're ready for the complications and the fight, you're ready to fight for it. Well, you're up for the challenge. Yeah, why not? But if you just want to settle it, there's also there are a lot of ways to settle it anyway. So it's up to you how far you can go and how much you really wanted to fight for it. Yes.
Those are definitely some very important considerations. And in a little bit, I think what we're going to delve into the scenarios in the film as a kind of a basis for this discussion. It's kind of helpful that it's anonymous, it's somebody else's story, but kind of resonates with other families' struggles. So maybe we can kind of tease out a few pointers or things to consider. At this point, I'd also like to now invite Vice Consul Lopez. Thank you for joining us tonight. Could you just tell us a little bit about your background as an attorney and a member of the Foreign Service, and also specifically, in your role as Vice Consul, how often do you encounter kababayan, requesting assistance with property disputes in the Philippines?
Okay. Hi, Mark. Thank you for inviting us also. So it's actually a pleasure for us to be here, and it's also an opportunity for us in the consulate to for the public to be able to know of our services. Okay. So regarding my background, I used to work, I think you put here the Superior Court. No, I used to work in the Court of Appeals, just like Attorney Dizon. But during my time there, I was not yet an attorney. I was still a law student. And but nevertheless, I was still given assignments that refer to drafting of decisions, and basically I was serving as my dad's executive secretary, assistant. I was his executive assistant. Okay, so attendance, mostly administrative work. But I was also he also makes me draft cases, especially those that he thinks that can practice me, in when I was in law school, and also prepare me for the bar. So it was a good experience. So I was able to see how legal practice is in a way, and but of course, really my goal was just really to be in the foreign service as well, because my undergraduate was international studies. When I was in the foreign service, my first assignment was protocol. So I dealt again. It might sound like it was dealing with dignitaries, events, but they placed me in this section called Immunities and Privileges Division. So my desk there was in charge of monitoring the privileges and immunities awarded to, enjoyed by foreign diplomats assigned in the Philippines. So in a way, we also deal with legal issues because once in a while, they end up having, encounters with our laws, or maybe their land ownerships, or they're trying to extend their privilege as much as they can. So it's up to us to monitor those. Then after that, I did my master's abroad, and then when I got back, they placed me in the immunity, in the legal Office of Legal Affairs, or OLA. All right. During my time in OLA, I was my first job there was in the Service of Summons Division. So actually, if you're familiar with the Hague Conventions on Private International Law, serving summons abroad, basically that's what I was doing. For example, cases in the Philippines, we serve them, we serve their how do you call that? Their legal papers and legal documents abroad. So basically, that's the long and short of that. And then after that, I was placed in the Treaties Division as the director during my time there. Basically, all the treaties that the Philippine government enters, executive agreements, they go through me for legal screening, and we also assist in their passing into the ratification, either as an executive agreement signed by the president or through Senate concurrence. So I'm proud to say that one of the things that I was able to accomplish there during my time in the Treaties Division is we were able to push through with the Philippine accession to the Apostille Convention. So I'm sure you guys are aware of that. Actually, it makes it easier for private documents, public documents in the abroad to be recognized in the Philippines, in a way that it eliminates the step of basically consularization. No, you don't need to submit it anymore in the Philippine consulate, and if you have already had it apostilled. So for example, public documents such as marriage certificates, legal documents, laws. If you're trying to get yourself how do you call that, a judgment by the foreign court recognized in the Philippines. So that's one of the services that we're able to do during my time in legal. Okay, and then now I'm in the Philippine Consulate in Houston, and I do encounter from time to time our kababayans requesting for assistance on Philippine property, but I mostly encounter this from people trying to get dual citizenship. Okay, so just a little background also, I am the one handling dual citizenship in the Philippine Consulate in Houston. So sometimes, they share to me, hey, I wanted to become a Philippine citizen to recover the land in the Philippines. And then I tell them, you don't actually need to, you can actually inherit the land in the Philippines without being a dual citizen. Or, for example, they sometimes they get bad advice that just because they became American citizens, that means that they're already not entitled to own land in the Philippines. That's not actually true. They actually maintain ownership of the land if it's been given to them, regardless of their later citizenship. But anyway, I do try to assist them from time to time. Especially, I do briefings every time I have dual citizenship oath taking, and then whenever they arrive in the consulate, sometimes they do request for some legal advice. With regard to our resources in the Philippine Consulate, as you know, we can do acknowledgements, notarial services. If you do appear in the Philippine Consulate, we will be able to notarize your SPAs for use in the Philippines, or agreements, contracts. All right, we are able to acknowledge signatures of affiants and parties to contracts. And finally, if you're also aware of that, there is what we call video conference hearings. Litigants here in the United States, especially in our jurisdiction, can appear to their hearings in the Philippines through the video conference hearing mechanism given by our Supreme Court, by going to the Philippine Consulate in Houston. Of course, they would need a court order in order to have that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Consul, for those very helpful pieces of information. Hopefully, they'll be of service to some of our guests here. So at this point, we'll just walk through, do a deeper dive into some of the stories in Kristian's film, and an acknowledgement of kind of the late start we had. Unless any of our speakers have a hard stop in 30 minutes, if we may kind of run over a little bit, to also permit some of our attendees to ask questions if they come up as well. But at this point, maybe I'll turn to Eileen again, because this seems kind of actually tailor-made for us attorneys here, because these kind of read like law school hypotheticals. And I'll just recap the stories here, and Eileen or Vice Consul, if any important issues kind of resonate with you, feel free to kind of elaborate on that, and Kristian as well, if there's any other context in your interviews that you would find helpful for everybody else to know, please feel free to chime in as well. So let's start off with the first clip titled Filipino American. And there, various members of a PhilAm's family are attacked and killed over the course of several years because of a dispute over property that was divided between 8 siblings. So, I mean, Eileen, you kind of touched upon this earlier, but what happens when people come from the U.S. To assert what may be a rightful legal claim to property there in the Philippines, and they're met with resistance or even violence? Oh, I think you're muted here. Let's get you on audio.
Yeah, sorry, I tried. I tried 3 times to unmute myself. For some reason, it's not going through, but now I'm good. So yeah, sad to say, it's just a piece of property, we say, but it costs lives. I mean, people are in the Philippines, they have deep connection to the land, because most of the time that's all they have. I mean, if you go to the provinces, even in the urban area. So your question, what do they have to do? Of course, they need some assistance of an attorney. Definitely, you need to know first your rights. Do you have a right over the property? Because in the Philippines, civil law, there is the so-called legitim. Okay, so you need to know first if how are you acquiring ownership over the parcel of land or property in the Philippines? Are you acquiring it through a inheritance, through a will, or without a will? So you need to look into those concepts first, so that you know how to proceed. And also there's a question of, are you a foreign national, or are you a dual citizen? And those are some factors that will help you determine what are your rights. First, of course, you have to establish your rights, and you need to consult to an attorney who is actually practicing this kind of law, because it could be complicated for you, especially if it involves nationality, citizenship, and ownership of properties in the Philippines, because there is there's a restriction as to ownership of property by a foreign national. But of course, like what Vice Consul Mark has already mentioned, we have rights for former Filipino citizens, or those who are later on or became dual, So you establishing your rights first, that's the first thing you need to know. I guess from there you'll know how to proceed, because in the Philippines there is a so-called, unlike here in the US, they basically here in Texas, we don't have legitims, which means that if it's your property, you are free to give it to whoever you want, to will it to whoever you wanted to, give the property after you pass away. In the Philippines, there is a legitims, which means that you can only give a portion of your property, so-called the free portion of your estate, to whoever you want to give it to. Legitimes are protected. No matter what, they will receive what they are entitled to receive. So that is why you need to know first, you need to establish first your rights over the property. And then, of course, location. Where is it located? You know, what kind of property are we talking about? Agricultural, residential? So there's a lot of factors to consider. That's why it's important to consult with an attorney there first before you do something. And then after that, after you establish your rights on your rights over the property, then you'll have to determine who are the other, heirs who are actually living in, well, it depends if it's an agricultural land who are
Oh, I think we've lost Eileen's video. Eileen, is your audio working? Okay. Let me ask Vice Consul, Marco. Are there, there's kind of the legal rights, that people can assert, but what are the practical options that someone might have, and how can families, how can they plan in advance, maybe, so that they can avoid some of these conflicts? If you've had any experience with that. I see Eileen has just joined as well. So
I would think Attorney Eileen would want to continue her speech on this one. But on my end, I would think that it could actually be avoided first and foremost on family relationship. Is land really worth destroying the family for? A lot of time actually is. It happens. But if there's one thing, that can help is actually estate planning. So you can actually make a will, and I would think Attorney Eileen would be a better a better person to explain because of her extensive practice in estate planning and succession law. But I would think that if you are already before they die, of course, the patriarch or the matriarch of the family, it would actually be wise to make a will, right? Or of course, talk to your heirs, make them understand that when you die, you intend to give part of what you own to, to say your eldest child, your second child, your third child. Emphasize always the importance of family. And if there's one thing about wills in the Philippines, there are two kinds of wills in the Philippines. One is, how do you call that? One is a notarial will, which is the usual way, the usual will that you have in mind, with all the formalities, and then you have it notarized. Or it could also be a holographic will. I would think, and I think a lot of books that I've read actually prefer having a notarial will because it is your opportunity to have also a connection with your heirs. Okay, so because it's completely handwritten, dated, and signed by the testator, you can actually, it's not really, it's not as formal as a notarial will, but it has the same effect. You can also write it in any way you want, among which way you can actually make it into, say, a letter to your heirs. I don't know if they, you can actually resonate with that. You can actually have more of an emotional connection with your heirs by writing your will. And of course, hopefully they will actually respect that will and not throw it out and not submit it to probate, But if in any case, the easiest way also, apart from that, is to have them agree extrajudicially, even before going to court. I always advise people, always go to court only as a last resort. because if you go to court, I know it's a very expensive ordeal, the expensive and time-consuming ordeal, and it will end up also destroying the fabric of the family, which is actually the most important unit. Even our law actually, acknowledges that.
Yeah, those are just incredibly important points. And estate planning, drafting a will, I think it's imperative, for folks, whether they are in the Philippines or here in the U.S., properties in both countries. And that's a good way to move on to the next scenario, the patriarchy scenario, while we're on the subject of choosing who gets to inherit. And in that scenario, the sole female heir receives the least desirable land that the family owns, the one that's located furthest from Manila. And after her death, the husband ends up selling the land, having to sell it at a very cheap price. So again, I'll open it up. Do any of you still see this kind of sexism playing out in the current day with respect to property distribution? Any personal just observations or trends, or in the media regarding kind of this dynamic? Here we go. There we go.
Yeah, see, I can't unmute myself. Anyway, yes, this is still happening. I mean, it's because of the culture in the Philippines that usually if a daughter gets married, the daughter will live with the husband wherever, follows the husband, so the female or the daughter will leave the land eventually. And so that's why in the provinces, they give the premium location of the lot, portion of the lot to the males, because of the notion that the male or the son will live in the property, bring and raise his own family there, while the daughter will follow the husband. So the daughter will eventually leave the property. So that's why I think in that story, the husband of the daughter who actually inherited the land ended up selling the property, because that's the usual thing that is happening there. They don't live in the property, so they sell it, and so they get the least, the most disadvantageous part of or portion of the land. So it's still happening, especially in the provinces, because of this patriarchy.
Oh, she's having audio problems. Anyway.
Well, hopefully it was only a short interruption last time, so hopefully she can join us real soon. Okay, well, this next question, you may be able to address as well, Vice Consul, which is the special power of attorney story. So in that scenario, 5 siblings inherit land near a heavily built up area, which they're interested in selling to developers.
Concept in the
is that weird? Emily trying to join? Okay. We'll give her a moment. We'll keep her muted until she can appear. But yeah, in that scenario, the siblings want to make some money. They want to sell off this land to developers because it's highly desirable. But they have not been able to secure what it says in the film, an extrajudicial settlement, because one, the siblings mistrust each other, and then kind of just typical bureaucratic delays that have been compounded by the pandemic. And meanwhile, you have one of the daughters of the siblings. She wants to buy everybody else out because she wants to continue cultivating the property and prevent it, from falling into the hands of outside commercial interests. So maybe, especially for most of the folks here who I think don't have that much background in Philippine law, can you tell us a little bit about what they're referring to in regards to this extrajudicial settlement? And if Kristian, if there's any other context as well, feel free to add that as well.
Okay. okay, from what I read here, the extrajudicial settlement of the estate is what is being referred here. So for example, say the decedent, the property owner dies, leaving out, an X number of heirs, and the heirs by themselves agree on a way to dispose the property. You don't need to go to court to submit the property to probate, or for the court to actually decide which property goes to whom. Actually, this is the easiest way to dispose of the property after the decedent dies. Ideally, when a decedent dies under our Philippine law, okay, the heirs would own the property collectively. All of them own it, collectively. So they just have a share. They don't have individual rights over said property. They own everything collectively. Okay, so they would have to agree between themselves on how to divide the property amongst themselves, and none of them, according to this scenario, trust each other to actually sell the property or do what needs to be done regarding it. Also, another thing regarding the extrajudicial settlement, it also presupposes that the decedent did not leave any will, and they also did not leave any debts. Okay, so that's another thing about this one. All right, and then it also mentions that the daughter of one sibling wishes to buy everyone out because she wishes to continue cultivating the property and prevent it from falling into the hands of outside commercial interests. Unfortunately for the daughter, she actually needs to have the concurrence of every other sibling and every other heir and actually buy the property from them. It also needs to be considered that she's not a direct heir at the time of perhaps this one, and it is actually the sibling who is a co-owner of the property. So what needs to be done is all the 5 siblings agree to sell their share over that property to that daughter. Okay? Unfortunately, I don't think there is a way for her to coerce the other siblings from doing so, because that would be confiscatory. Yeah, so the best way is to just offer them.
It seems like that there is kind of just a rift in how the two sides of this family view land and its purpose and what you can get out of it, and maybe almost even generational as well, which goes back to the importance of the relational aspect of it. That's something that we maybe don't have a court-imposed remedy for. So again, it goes back to the importance of communication and building those relationships. Aileen, do you have any kind of any other observations regarding this case here?
Actually, so the daughter here is wanting to buy the properties. Basically, legally speaking, the property belongs to the 5 siblings. Am I getting it right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so
She wants to keep it in the family and not turn it into, her words, some touristy stuff, or or a subdivision or a mall.
And all the 5 siblings are still alive, or one of the siblings passed away, or
just from the film, it sounds like they're still all alive. But
okay.
They're disagreeing amongst themselves on how they can move forward. But then you have another factor of the younger member here just wanting just a different direction for this land, but she has no recourse legally, it appears.
Well, I see 2 layers here. First, of course, if the property was inherited by the 5 siblings, they have to settle it first among themselves. They have to settle the estate, because if they inherited it from their parents, the transfer is not automatic. So in order for them to sell it or dispose it, they have to acquire the title over that property through extrajudicial settlement, as what Vice Consul Marcos already discussed. He already discussed the requirements. So they have to go through that first, settle the estate. And then if the daughter is really wanted to buy it, and the five siblings are willing to sell it, then again, we're going to look into, is a daughter dual, is a daughter foreign national? So those are the questions that you will have to ask in order for the daughter to to do whatever she wanted to do with the property. And then once, let's say, for example, let's say the estate was already settled, and that and that the daughter is legally, the daughter can legally acquire the property. Then you'll have to make sure the taxes are properly paid. There's so many taxes you have to pay. You have to settle it. Make sure that the land is, of course, up. There's no unpaid taxes. And since this is an inherited land, there's also an estate tax. You have to make sure you have to pay for that. And also, if there are some penalties, you can avail of the amnesty still. The amnesty is until next year, right, Vice Consul Marco? Yeah. So aside from the 6% estate tax you have to pay, there's also a penalty if how long has been the parents dead and did not settle the estate. So you have to count the number of years that they did not settle the estate. Now there's some sort of a penalty already to pay. So then it goes to how much the value of the property. So that's why we always look at, okay, how much is the value of the property right now? How much tax are owed right now? And then you decide from there, because you'll never know. Maybe you'll be paying a lot more taxes than what you're going to get out of it. So those are the consideration if the daughter really wanted to buy this property and preserve its, current status. So yeah, those are the things that she has to hurdle.
I also actually have a question.
Yes.
This section is called a special power of attorney. For which reason? Why is it called a special power of attorney?
I believe she's trying to get a special power of attorney from all the 5 siblings, maybe giving her the authority to sell the land or purchase the land, whatever. It's not clear, but it's just mentioned about the special power of attorney. So, and usually I get this kind of special power of attorney issue if the person who's supposed to inherit land in the Philippines, can't go to the Philippines and just wanting a relative to do the work for her or for him. So they execute this power of attorney, giving them the power to settle it extrajudicially, sign on her behalf, come up with a negotiated price, something like that. So special power of attorney is very, very important for you to read and understand. It could be very broad. So I always look into when they ask me to, hey, attorney, can you please look at the special power of attorney? Is this, is this more of my advantage or not? So I look into the powers that are actually being granted to a relative in the Philippines. So I'll always make sure when there's a negotiation, to whoever is your agent, to not give the power to sign on your behalf right away without consulting with you as to the terms of the negotiation. Because if you look at the language, the default that they create, you're just giving everything to the power to that person. And then you end up, well, I don't think it was sold in a reasonable price, but you gave the power. It's in your power of attorney. So I think that's what those are the issues that you have to deal with when it comes to executing a special power of attorney for somebody there to act on your behalf.
Yep. And in addition to that, if he's actually here, if you do want to execute a special power of attorney in the US, there are 2 ways. One is to visit your local notary public and make that special power of attorney, and then have that apostilled, by the Secretary of State from the state which gave the notarial license to that local notary public. On the other hand, you can also bring the notary public to you can bring the special power of attorney to the Philippine Consulate or Embassy and have your signature acknowledged there. Okay, so that way you can use your SPA in the Philippines. So there's two ways.
Yeah, and just to add to that one, or clarify, if it's not all special power of attorney really will need you to have it apostilled or red ribbon at the consulate. Yeah, but if it involves properties, real properties, it's always you're always required to have it apostilled or go to the consulate for that matter. Or if you are transacting with government offices in the Philippines, they will require that. Or some banking.
Okay, I think we might be losing her one more time. But in the meantime, let's talk about the next scenario, which is a little less heavy. It's the means of life. Oh, okay. It's the means of livelihood story, and in that case, a woman inherits land from her aunt, which has been continuously occupied by tenants who have been farming it for almost 90 years. After the woman passes, her son decides to do nothing with the property and allows the tenants to keep relying on the land for their income. So I think this is a case where somebody doesn't have that type of connection to the land. They're here in the U.S. They see that there are folks relying on it for a very long time, and they wish not to upset the status quo, which I think is works out pretty well at the moment for the residents. But what are the pros and cons of maintaining the status quo like this, like the son in this scenario?
Yes, okay. Okay, I'm sorry about my internet. For some reason, of all the days, it chooses today. So, okay. So the son decided not to do anything. Okay, well,
Yes.
be very careful with this one because somebody could acquire ownership over that property if you do nothing. Because there's a law of adverse possession in the Philippines, like somebody could acquire title over the property for a certain period of time if the person is actually using the property or occupying the property openly, notoriously for a certain period of time. They may be able to acquire title over the property, even if it's already owned by somebody else. In the Philippines, there are lands that are not yet titled. They only have the proof of their ownership. It could be just a tax declaration that they're paying taxes. But some properties, of course, have already titled. So, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is because if the person who is actually using the property or living in the property is living in the property under a good title, believing that he owns the property and the property is not yet titled, and that person is possessing the property for continuous 10 years, then with additional requirements that needed to be done, that person could acquire ownership over the property. So if you inherited that property from your parents and you do nothing for 10 years, you didn't go there, you are somebody else is actually living in the property. For example, the property is a agricultural land and somebody's actually tilling the property, for agricultural purposes, using it for that purpose, then that person could acquire title over the property. So if you do nothing, then you will lose it. So that's just, one of the risks that you're taking. I mean, I understand you don't want to get entangled with a family dispute
and kick people off, but at this point they're there, for over 90 years.
Yeah.
It sounds like they may have a pretty strong claim, if the son, lets this situation persist, and well, who knows? But I guess the other consideration, right, is longer term. What about that son's descendants? Maybe they would be interested in the land. Who knows? But so that's something that they probably should kind of decide, how to dispose of that at this point. Yeah, even if things seem, to be just fine for the moment.
That is correct. Don't be complacent because your relative could acquire the property, or not even relatives, whoever is possessing the property. Either 10 continuous years or 30 continuous years if it's in bad faith. Like, the person knows that somebody owns the land and there's a title to it already, it can still be taken by somebody else. So your descendants may not have anything else, any rights to enforce anymore later on. So yeah.
So this is interesting as we kind of move towards, the last two scenarios. These are almost variations on themes or almost inverses of each other. So for example, for this next one, which is titled Custodian. So the family has been farming a piece of really fertile land that sits on a natural spring. And eventually the owner is convinced by his son to open the property up to the public and establish a resort. The resort becomes a popular attraction, and it provides income for at least 5 generations of this family. The family considers themselves stewards of the land. They view their management of it as a means to conserve the land's beauty and natural resources. So again, an even more, kind of maybe positive outcome here, which is very interesting contrast with the special power of attorney scenario where, both families there, see the land as a means of livelihood and income. But in one case, there's a dispute, there's a conflict over whether to sell the land off to outsiders. While in this case, the property still remains in the family's hands and very much is a valued part of their business.
Yeah, actually, I think this is more of dealing with it within the family kind of issue. Because yeah, you own the property, but you're just owner under, like under title maybe, but you're not there. Actually, you're not mad. To my understanding, it's just they own the property under the title, but another family, members are actually involved in the running and management of the property. So of course they will, they'll say that there's their fruit of, labor. You did not.
Okay, we'll just give that another chance. Although we are nearing the end, so Eileen won't have to deal with these issues for very much longer. But yeah, I think maybe what she was trying to emphasize though is, even, that family who seems, very much involved in the affairs and running the land, that of course they need to also decide, all the rights and responsibilities within the various family members who are running the business on the land. Okay, well, that brings us to the last scenario, which is kind of a very difficult one as well. Also kind of a cliffhanger. This one, final one, is called Balisongs and Machetes. So a woman residing in the US becomes the executor of her mother's estate. And this includes land in the Philippines that was intended to be split among the 6 surviving children. Now, the executor left the Philippines as a teenager, and she has no knowledge of the local laws. To add to that, she doesn't have any paperwork documenting the ownership status of this land, nor even the boundaries of the property. And there's a distant cousin who now learns after, the passing of the relative that she's claiming herself title to the property. She basically says that, one of the uncle's wives, quote unquote, kind of stole the land at some point, which I'm sure there's a very, Interesting story there, but long story short, she claims she has a title to it. And so now the executor goes to the Philippines to visit the land with her sisters, and they're confronted by the tenants who are occupying the land. The tenants are armed. They have their knives and their machetes, and they're regarded almost as intruders, as interlopers. The executor, is a retiree, and she's reluctant to take up the fight. But at the very end, she also says she fears losing the land and her ability to pass it on to her descendants. And if she doesn't act in time, the government may intervene. I think she says that there's a 5-year, the clock starts ticking from the grandmother's death. And she fears that either the government would then seize the land or tax it or otherwise kind of affect the rights. So this is tough. What practically, legally, what is this woman's, options, given the lack of documents, plus, this resistance from the people who are actually on this land. I will have to manually unmute again. Yes.
Okay, anyway, I guess I always tell my clients, is it worth it? So practically speaking, legally speaking, you have rights. You can always enforce your rights. You just probably need to bring the battle to the court. And then if you won, then there's the challenge of enforcement. Can you really enforce the decision without violence? I mean, especially, in this case, there's already violence happening right now. And it's really, really hard to deal with this kind of issues because you may resort to losing lives of people, along the way. I remember one of the cases that I happened to land on my desk before. It's a family in Isabela with, like they're armed people, They have, it's so sad because they have all the rights on the land, but because they're constantly being harassed, threatened by these people, they couldn't have any peace of mind anymore. They can't even till the land anymore. So what's the point? I mean, you can go ahead and like I said, fight it in court, and then if you won on the first level, like let's say, for example, you went to the court of regional trial court for that matter, whatever it is that you're filing, and then you go up to Court of Appeals. How long will it take? And then you go up to the Supreme Court. How long will it take? It's probably already your grandchildren who's who may continue to fight. I'm just letting you know. I mean, just practicality. There are some land disputes that are like 40 years already still there at the Court of Appeals level. And I'm not saying because of some politics or anything, but because of evidence also. And then, of course, the willingness of the people to pursue it, versus the other side. And then, so that's why you have to think about it. What are you fighting for here? The ownership, the ability to pass it on? What are you passing on? The violence? I mean, where is the property located? What is the value of the property? So practicality wise, you have to think about all these questions. Is it worth it? Your time and your life and the lives of your people around you. Because, this problem can be passed on to generations and generations. So maybe the original people involved are already gone, but their children and children, it's not going to end. I haven't seen any, issues that are related to land dispute as deadly as this that has been resolved. I'm not sure, Attorney Marco, do you have anything to add to that? I'm just being practical. It's always it's always good to let you see the practical side and the legal side of it. Yes, you have the right. Go ahead, fight for it. But are you willing to face all the challenges of money, effort, time, lives? Yes. Attorney Marco is muted.
Yeah, I think I'm going to manually again unmute him. Vice Consul, are you able to unmute your
Sure.
audio? There you go.
Sorry about that. Okay. Actually, just my 5 cents worth of that. I totally agree. I totally agree with Attorney Eileen. Land disputes take so much time, right? If and then we were studying law, I'm sure we read about cases, property law, real property law, and it's always, if you check the timeline of the cases, it's always 40 years, 50 years. It takes a really, really long time to actually decide these cases. So although you might be trying to be actively involved in that, I don't think it will be actually within the lifetime of that person trying to be involved in the land dispute. And in any case, this goes back to the first thing I said earlier in the in this webinar, that I always advise people, as much as possible, try to solve this amicably within yourself, and the court should always be the last resort, because once you go and resort to legal means, it will take a while. And secondly, it will strain relationships that are, that are familial. It will strain the family. So it's actually, as much as possible, the best way is really to talk among yourselves. Maybe hire a third party, arbitrate it, as if you want, and then agree, come up, do everything in your power to come up with an agreement, okay, with regard to land.
I guess that's a point very well taken. I know there's a saying, some of the younger folks, about how do we break generational curses, and this can relate to all sorts of dynamics, but I think it's especially rings true in these scenarios where in the past violence has has struck. And so, thank you, everyone, for walking us through those scenarios. We do have just a handful of questions, which I think we can probably answer pretty briefly. A couple of these I think are also related. So Wilna and Nadia are both asking about where people can find legal help. How can they connect with an attorney to help them out? And now I know both Eileen and Vice Consul Marco, you're members of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines, which of course is separate from organizations here, in the US, even NFALA, even though we're trying to establish some of those bridges. It's just a logistical thing that we have to really take care of. But at this point, where can people find trusted legal counsel to help them with issues in the Philippines? Another muting. Okay, let me just time here.
Okay, so well, wherever you are situated, because I know this is nationwide, right? So different states. So maybe the first, if you're from the United States, or you are located here, reach out to the consulate. They probably have a list of
Right. On our part, actually, we cannot really refer you to any particular, because that's an advertisement on our part. We cannot really officially advertise someone to actually lawyer for you. It's basically there are thousands of attorneys in the Philippines you can actually choose from, but I would think you can actually reach out directly to the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. They can actually give you a referral if you need one, or if you wish, there are lawyers catalogs that you can find online, or basically even the IBP itself. If not, it's also wise to actually also get an attorney here. There are many practitioners here, such as Attorney Eileen Dizon, who can also not only practice here but also in the Philippines. Perhaps you would have partners in the Philippines that you can refer them to, or you're already actively working in. so that it would be easier for you to communicate with lawyers who are actually here. You can see, instead of just calling them over the phone. And secondly, litigating is actually much easier now, considering that the means of video conference hearings is also available for those who are living abroad. Okay, so that's where the consulate can help you. So for example, you end up litigating, filing a case in the Philippines. You can have your lawyer there set up an order with the court and with the Consulate General or the embassy for that matter to set up a video conference hearing here so you can attend your hearings here in the US and no longer visit the Philippines, just for that, one court hearing. I would think that, if you do want to visit the Philippines, you want to visit it, in a happy manner, as a vacation or see family and not bicker with them. So, that's one thing that's one way that the consulate can assist in matters such as these.
The big word is trusted. It's actually, it's your due diligence as well. People can make referrals, but it's your due diligence to
It's your due diligence to look for an attorney in the Philippines. They can refer you to Mr. X or Mr. Y, Attorney X and Attorney Y. But of course, it's also your, it would also be advantageous to you to do your research. That's why, going back to my previous advice, if you can find a lawyer here who has partners in the Philippines, that should also help you in your, in your case.
Maybe that's also a small plug for NFALA in that we do have a publicly searchable directory of our members where you can filter by practice areas. And there is a field that indicates, who is licensed in the Philippines. So that's for the public, but for any attorneys here as well and fellow members, this is also a reminder to please, fill out your membership profile on the NFALA website because the directory is only as good as the information you provide. And that's really how people can find you if they search for you. And we are running up on time, but there is another question here as well about, maybe this is also for the Vice Consul. Where can we find more information regarding land rights for non-Filipino citizens? Is there a resource that the consulate can connect people with?
Okay, not at this time, but what I can tell you is that our law on land ownership and is actually land ownership by foreigners is actually quite diverse. So it's a hodgepodge of different regulations. But long and short of it, the general rule is that foreigners are not allowed to acquire land in the Philippines. So you have to make a distinction between acquisition and ownership, right? So you can actually own the land, but you cannot acquire the land, all right? Secondly, another exception to that can be found in in other laws, right? Apart from the Constitution, of course, is that former Filipinos can also own land in the Philippines. They can actually acquire land, but only up to a certain limited amount. No, we actually try to put that also in the website of our website on dual citizenship. Okay, so former Filipinos can acquire land up to 1,000 square meters for residential property, 5,000 for business. Basically, that's pretty much it.
Great,
Yeah.
thank
So
you.
I would suggest, you can try to do your independent research on that one, or maybe hire an attorney.
Okay, at this point, we're gonna have to cut off for the last question before we conclude. This question states, besides the time it takes to complete the trial and appeals process and the costs, what other aspects of the system in the Philippines makes it difficult or discourages parties involved to resolve their disputes? Oh, bless you.
Sorry. Can you repeat that one? What makes it difficult?
Yeah, just your personal observation, are there any other, factors you've observed that, make it difficult for people, to access the legal system in the Philippines and to resolve their disputes through that mechanism?
Well, I would think that one of the hindrances in accessing the legal system in the Philippines is, of course, as we have also discussed earlier, it would be time consuming and expensive for you to actually go directly through a legal resort over the problems. All right, that's why I was advocating earlier for you to actually resolve the dispute in extra and within yourselves, amicably before actually submitting it to court. Apart from that, of course, you would also need to encounter issues of taxation, attorney's fees. Basically, it's really the time, the process, and the cost. Other aspect of Philippine legal system.
Which of course also rings true here in the US, unfortunately, as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's really, you're really subjecting it to, to scrutiny. Basically, you're subjecting your life and your property to scrutiny if you subject it to legal process. So also, of course, it's a privacy concern on your part to actually submit it to a legal process. Darny, I made.
I mean, if you have anything else to add? I think her video might be frozen.
Legal system makes it difficult.
Okay. Well, we are, reaching that point. So thank you everybody for sticking around with us despite the initial delay, but hopefully we made it worth your time with this extra discussion. So at this point, I'd like to thank Vice Consul Marco, Eileen, and Kristian for sharing their insights with us, and of course Kristian and his wonderful film. So let me just kick it back one last time, and if you would all kind of share how to contact you, any projects or information that you might want to promote as well.
Hey everybody. Yeah, if you look me up on social media with my name, you can find me Instagram, Facebook, etc. Kumu, or kabuay.com. And I think what I'm working on now is continuing telling these types of stories. My other film I've been working on since 2010 is titled Sulat ng Malansang Isda, Writing of the Stinky Fish. And it is an immigrant story, a deeply personal one about my family, but my family story is also many of your family stories. So look out for that in the next, hopefully the next year or so. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen, I think you're unmuted at this point.
I think she's gone.
Oh, okay. I see her on the list here, but maybe not. Okay. Well, Eileen, you can see her bio. When you registered, she's the principal and owner of the Liga Dizon law firm in Houston. So you can easily Google that. Okay, and I think she's back. So let's ask her to plug away her firm in any related activities. Oh, I think, okay, well, she may be frozen again. Okay, and finally, Vice Consul, any announcements that the consulate in Houston, or maybe just the embassy in general, that people might want to know about?
Texas.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. I think Attorney Eileen.
Okay, Eileen, yeah,
I
would
was
you mind
repeating.
repeating, what you just said, because you were.
I don't even know what to say now because I got lost for most of the
Yeah,
time.
we're just asking you, your contact info, where people can find you, plug your firm, and any other kind of related announcements.
Okay, so we have the website 𝐀𝐢𝐥𝐞𝐘𝐧.com. You can send us a message there. You can schedule appointment. Our main phone number is 713-936-2889. You can directly email me at eileen@𝐀𝐢𝐥𝐞𝐧.com. So I don't know what else to say. I feel like
All right. Sorry about that. Okay.
Well, I will also add that Eileen hosts a weekly podcast on Friday nights. I believe it is 9 p.m. Central. I can say that with a good bit of confidence.
I've lost most of the part of the good conversation, but I'm
yeah, look out for her podcast. I was a previous guest, and so every week it's all different sorts of very practical, legal, and business topics. And Vice Consul, did you have anything else to add?
All right. I just want to plug into that podcast. Actually, I was also a guest.
Another
in
distinguished
podcast.
alum.
I was the first. You can catch episode 1. We talked about land ownership for foreigners, Filipinos. So if you're also looking for that resource, we actually had an extensive discussion with Attorney Eileen on that one. Ended up discussing about land ownership by foreigners and former Filipinos and dual citizens for maybe more than an hour. So it could be a good resource for you. Anyway, on the part of the consulate, yeah, you can send us if you have any questions. You can send us an email. I'm also including my personal email address. I have put it on the chat box, pcghouston.vc@gmail.com. That goes straight to me. If you have, I'm the only lawyer in the entire consulate. So if you have any questions, we can try to answer that. In any case, it's houston.pcg@dfa.gov.ph for the general line. With regard to announcements, I would advise that you check our websites from time to time. We do have an outreach coming up in what's that place in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, very soon in July. July 8 and 9, or 9 and 10. Yeah, that weekend. Okay. So if you're ever, if you need, if you're in the area and need passport assistance or wishing to apply for dual citizenship, feel free to go to our website and read the requirements and the process on how to apply for that. For the video conference hearings, we also posted that on our website. It's actually now part of the consular services. So if ever you have a current case, you need to attend hearings, you may want to consider doing it via video conference. We of course, you need to set it up with the court, and if the court gives an order, then definitely you would be able to appear on your court hearing through the Philippine Consulate in Houston or any other consulate or embassies around the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Consul. And then last thing, we just have a couple announcements ourselves, the participating organizations. So let me just throw up some graphics here. So FYLPRO next month in July, from July 21 to 24 in Washington, D.C., the organization will be celebrating its 10th anniversary. The deadline to RSVP is July 1st. So go over to filpro.org, where you can also learn about how to become a member and other events. This is going to be a really special occasion. It's going to take place over several days. There'll be plenty of opportunities to network and connect with folks from pretty much every single industry, profession, and educational background in the Filipino community, as well as a dinner at the embassy to commemorate our 10th year. 𝐀𝐢𝐥𝐞𝐞𝐧 is a project of FYLPRO. It was launched in 2020 to help our kababayan navigate the pandemic by providing reliable, trustworthy information about health and government services and other information to help navigate COVID-19. 𝐀𝐢𝐥𝐞𝐞𝐧.com is the website, and there is a large database of articles related to so many different topics related to COVID and related issues. We recently just launched a help hotline, which the number is here, 1-800-899-5090. It's open every day from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific. Assistance is available in both English and Filipino. And so we were able to launch this to finally also replicate our services on the website to folks who might not be as comfortable navigating the internet. As for NFALA, tomorrow from 12 to 1 noon Pacific, we have our Pinay Powerhouse and Women's Committee Power Chat. We'll be featuring a panel of in-house attorneys, including attorneys at some big names such as Yeti Coolers, Verizon, the Oakland Athletics, and Peloton. So NFALA.com is the website where you can find that information. And also be sure to follow us on the big social media platforms. This is also another big week for us as well, because on Friday, the 24th, we will have our second annual Pride celebration called NFALA Ganza. It is fully virtual. It'll take place from 4:45 p.m. to 6:30 Pacific. Again, head over to nfala.com/pride for that event specifically. We will feature all sorts of entertainment, reflections on the LGBTQ experience, including some prominent judges who are part of that community to kind of share and inspire with their stories. And of course, being a Filipino organization, it wouldn't be complete without karaoke and lip singing and other musical performances. So with that, I thank everybody for attending tonight. The recording of the Q&A will be posted on the FYLPRO Facebook page shortly, so watch out for that. And definitely, share it for people that weren't able to make it tonight. So with that, good night and take care.